Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to our Saturday workshop. Let's take a moment to settle in on the cushion, and we'll start with a short 3-minute sit to just open our session today. So to begin with, let's either take the cross-legged half lotus, full lotus, or Burmese lotus position on the cushion with your hips elevated and 3 points of contact, the 2 knees and the seat. Or if you're sitting in a chair, make sure that you're sitting forward and not resting your back on the chair, keeping the back perfectly straight, knees out in front, straight ahead, and the feet flat, pointing straight ahead as well. The back is held relaxed and straight. The head is held straight, as if you're supporting the ceiling with your head. You're stretching up slightly and tucking the chin. The eyes are remaining open, or half open, I should say, so that you're able to see the entire room around you. And we're not going internally, we're remaining perfectly present in the nowness of the present moment. We'll talk more about that today in what we're going to cover. The shoulders are relaxed and the chest is completely relaxed. And you'll notice the place where the 2 ribs come together, which is called the solar plexus. This should be relaxed and allowed to sink down into the abdomen, so that the abdomen or the stomach, or what we call the hara, is relaxed and full of energy. The small of the back, or what's called the koshi, is naturally curved forward, supporting the top of the body. This natural curve in the back, the koshi, allows the hara to come forward without restriction. And all our breathing is done in the belly. So try not to breathe with the chest. The hands are held in the cosmic mudra position, which means that the right hand cradles the left hand. And you just create a cup, like a cup. And the thumbs just very, very lightly touch one another, as if you're holding a piece of paper between the thumbs. You're not pressing the thumbs. They're not coming up like a mountain, and they're not going down like a valley. They're just going straight across like a bridge, very lightly touching. For 3 minutes, we'll just count our breaths, the cycles of breath until you reach 10, and then return to 1. So in this way, you count, you breathe in, and you breathe out, and you count that as 1. You breathe in, and you breathe out, and you count that as 2. All the way to 10, return to 1, and start again. So you'll hear the sound of a bell. Follow the sound of the bell until the sound of the bell fully disappears, and then begin counting your breaths. As thoughts arise, just notice the thoughts. Don't allow them to hook you into a dialogue. Just return to the counting of the breath. If you lose count, just start at number 1 again. Take a deep breath together and out. Good. Just sit comfortably, whatever way you wish. We don't have to have a formal posture for this next part of the class today. I'm going to move the computer in a little bit so I can be closer to you. So nice to see you all. France, Ireland, Japan, Boston. So welcome. And most of you have been attending regular meditation practice with me now since the start of the COVID back in March or end of March. And mainly I've been focusing a lot on just the basics of how to sit and how to breathe and what to do with the mind and all of that good stuff, which is, it's super important, and it is the core of mindfulness training. As I've been telling you, that practice, the formal practice of sitting, is a technique that you learn to build the capacity to be more mindful and more present in your everyday off the cushion, in whatever it is that you're doing, without distraction. And I thought it would be interesting today to bring you on a little, I suppose, a kind of a journey in a way, which starts and ends with a series of books that have been in my life since a long time ago, and kind of formed the basis for my own practice. And I thought it would be interesting to share some of the concepts that I learned over the course of my life in practicing mindfulness meditation, and these different writers and books that have influenced me in my practice. Today is going to be more of an exploration of concepts and also the origins of mindfulness training, and less about practice itself. But the concepts that I'm going to be going through in these books are really the foundation for mindfulness training. And that leads me to talk briefly about the origin of this word mindfulness and how it came to be that it became so popular in modern culture. Well, all mindfulness training, as it is popularly taught today by John Kabat-Zinn and the MBSR movement, and Tara Brach and a whole bunch of other people that are teaching a more secular type of mindfulness practice, originates back to the 2,500-year-old practice of sitting meditation as taught by the Buddha. So, all of the teachings that most modern teachers cover originate in some way back to the source of meditation practice, which was popularized by Gautama Buddha, as I say. So what I brought along today for our discussion or for our chat is really a series of books which they start at 1980 and they come up to today. So I'm just going to kind of go through these with you. The first one is a book by a gentleman named Chogyam Trungpa. If you get a chance, you can look these up, because some of these are fantastic books. This book called Meditation in Action by Chogyam Trungpa. It may be out of print, I'm not sure, but it was published in 1980. I got it around 1981. And Trungpa Rinpoche was the first of the famous Tibetan monks to come to the United States and teach that stream of meditation practice, which is slightly different to some of the other streams, the Chinese stream or the Japanese streams or Vietnamese streams of meditation. The Tibetan stream is a little bit more formalized and ritualized than, say, for instance, the Zen stream. But I picked out one thing. I've been going through these books and seeing where I've marked different things. And this particular thing that I marked out is that's very ironic. I just got a text from a person who gave me this book, and that's really weird. Okay, her name is Maggie Kottman. She's a German lady who was a very good friend of my mother's. And when I was a kid, she was like an auntie to me. And I don't hear from her that often, but she gave me this book. She married a follower of Chogyam Trungpa. He was a monk, and she knew I was interested in meditating, so she gave me this book. So that's really weird. Anyway, strange things happen. This short piece I'm going to read to you is describing the difference between the two kinds of meditation practices. The first being a devotional practice that we see in, for instance, Catholicism, Christianity, or also Hinduism. And this practice basically being based on you being a lower entity and subjugating yourself to a higher entity, okay? Being repentant and worshiping. So he says, Trungpa says, where there is the concept of an external higher being, there is also an internal personality, which is known as I, or the ego. In this case, meditation practice becomes a way of developing communication with an external being. This means that one feels oneself to be inferior and one is trying to contact something higher or greater. Such meditation is based on devotion. This is basically an inward or introvert practice of meditation, which is well known to in the Hindu teachings, where the emphasis is on going into the inward state of samadhi, into the depths of the heart. One finds similar technique practiced in the orthodox teachings of Christianity, where the prayer of the heart is used and concentration on the heart is emphasized, or love. This is a means of identifying oneself with an external being and necessitates purifying oneself. So he goes on to say that the second type of meditation practice, which is primarily that taught by the Gautama Buddha, is that there is no higher and no lower self, no higher entity and no lower entity called the self. So he says, specifically, he says, the other principal form of meditation is almost entirely the opposite in its approach, though finally it might lead to the same results. Here, there is no belief in higher and lower, the idea of different levels, or of being in an underdeveloped state does not arise. One does not feel inferior, and what one is trying to achieve is not something higher than oneself. Therefore, the practice of meditation does not require an inward concentration on the heart. He goes on to say, I'm skipping down a bit, he says, in this kind of meditation practice, the concept of nowness plays a very important part. In fact, it is the essence of meditation. Whatever one does, whatever one tries to practice, is not aimed at achieving a higher state or at following some theory or ideal, but simply without any object or ambition, trying to see what is here and now. So that's really seriously important to mindfulness meditation, which is this idea of experiencing what is happening right here and right now, rather than some altered state of reality or inward state of bliss. So in sitting on the cushion and practicing following the breath, we are really ultimately trying to do nothing. Absolutely nothing. And when I say nothing, I don't mean nothing in a negative way. I mean nothing in the positive sense that we're not painting another layer on top of it and giving ourselves a story about what this is supposed to be about. In other words, attaining some higher level of understanding or reaching some greater deepness of experience or reaching some kind of state of bliss. So this word he uses in that book called nowness is really about peeling all the layers off of the experience and truly experiencing for what it is without an internal dialogue. So in the practice itself of following the breath, we focus on the breath going in and out of the nose. We don't follow the breath into the hara. We just allow the hara to be full of energy. And we simply rest in the present moment. And of course, there's all of this stuff going on around us. Like I've often described, I live on a busy street in the city of Boston, and cars are going up and down, and there's horns going, and police driving around, and there's the sound of the air conditioning coming on, or the people in the apartment above walking. All of this stuff is happening. Now, I mean, what Trungpa is saying in this passage is, this is the nowness that we are not trying to paint a dialogue around. We're not trying to resist it, and we're not trying to hide ourselves from it, and we're not trying to judge it. We're just simply experiencing it for what it is. So if I'm sitting on the cushion and I have a pain in my knee or a pain in my back, that is the nowness of the present moment. And I sit with that. That's part of the experience. But if the pain hooks me in and overwhelms me, then we come back to the breath. We use the breath as the anchor to sit further into the present moment experience. So when I was, I don't know, I guess I was probably 17 or 18 when I first got this book. Actually, much younger, maybe 14. And I read that nowness piece. It really struck me as something really interesting. I didn't get terribly interested in the ritualized side of Trungpa's teaching, the deep sort of Tibetan journey of all the realms and all the stuff that goes with it. But the nowness story is a thread that goes through all of the teachings that started 2,500 years ago and end up today. So you'll hear all the other teachers of mindfulness practice, including John Kabat-Zinn and others, speaking about just what it is to be restful in the present moment, equanimity, not getting hooked on feelings, not getting hooked on emotions, and allowing yourself to experience what's really happening without judging. So then we skip to 1984, and this book called The Zen Way to the Martial Arts, okay? This is called The Zen Way to the Martial Arts, and it's by a gentleman named Taisen Deshimaru. Now, Taisen Deshimaru was a remarkable Zen meditation teacher who set up his first Western dojo in France. I can't remember which part of France, but I think it's in the south of France. And they are still practiced there today. I first learned about Taisen Deshimaru Roshi from a pupil of his in Ireland when I lived in Ireland as a kid, and started practicing with Alan Liebman, who was a Dharma heir, or a person who had been given specific personal training as a teacher from Deshimaru. And I loved Deshimaru's teachings because as many of you here are martial artists in one way or another, I'm also a martial artist, and Deshimaru Sensei was also a swordsman, and he didn't teach sword, but he talks about this in this passage that I'm going to read to you. He talks about the spirit of Budo, or the way of the warrior, and Zen meditation. And he talks about a word called fudochi, unmoving wisdom. You can see his calligraphy here, which means fudochi. And he says, the essence of the self is fudochi, which means unmoving wisdom, intuition, wisdom, physical action are always one. That is the secret of mindfulness meditation and of the martial arts. Just as the martial arts are not sports, sitting meditation is not some kind of massage or spiritual culture. In the beginning, the martial arts were a way to kill people. The Japanese sword or tachi is a long sword, but tachi also means to cut. In the word kendo, ken, like tachi, means sword and also cut. So that kendo means the way that cuts. Sword fighting goes back to prehistoric times in Japan. And of course, but the actual school of kendo began in 1346, founded by Shinkage, who was a founder of one of the schools of sword training. At first, the samurai wanted to obtain special powers, striking, remarkable, and magical abilities. They wanted to go through fire without being burned or be able to have a boulder fall on them without being crushed. So they trained their minds deliberately to obtain supernatural abilities and powers, and they were anything but disinterested. Later, they came under the influence of the great Zen teacher Miyamoto Musashi, for instance, who was a Japanese sword master, who also became a sage. And Musashi said, one must respect God and Buddha, but not be dependent upon them. At that point, the way that taught how to cut one's enemies in two became the way that taught how to cut one's own mind. A way of decision, resolution, determination. That was the true Japanese kendo. True Budo, strength and victory flow from decisiveness. One moves beyond the level at which most people stop. One transcends the conflict, transforms it into a spiritual progress. There was nothing sport-like about training in those days. The samurai had a higher vision of life. People in the West always want to use things, but the spirit of Zen cannot be squeezed into a narrow system. So he's saying there that basically the idea of acquiring something from practice, using sitting meditation practice, using mindfulness as a way to get something out of it is really fundamentally incorrect, okay, and really leads to a kind of delusion, okay. He goes on to say, of death as well, since the two cannot be dissociated, true kendo and true Zen must be beyond relativity. In other words, one must stop choosing, stop preferring one side or the other side in a relative scheme of things. Instead, make one decision. Human beings are not like lions and tigers, so the way of Budo must not be like them either. The tiger and lion are strong, and their instinct and desire make them want to win. It never occurs to them to abandon their ego, but human beings can go beyond the ego and death. In Budo, they must become even stronger than the lion or the tiger and discard the animal instinct that clings to the human spirit. So although he's discussing specifically the application of mindfulness and Zen training to the martial arts, what he's really saying is the idea of martial arts, the spirit of cutting into one's own mind, is essentially what true mindfulness training is all about. So cutting through one's own mind, through sitting practice to learn what it is that is intrinsic to our own problem. So when I say problem, I mean what it is that's separating ourselves from truly experiencing what's happening right here and right now, acting in life without anxiety, without hesitation, the ability to act purely and decisively in any given situation without doubt is what Deshimaru is talking about there. So the practice of martial arts becomes a parable or an example of the fight within. So we are in this battle within ourselves. You may choose to call it a battle or not, but it is this push and pull between the inner self and those things that have been acquired by your mind through teachings and learnings and experience, or simply passed down through traditions through your family. This acquired set of principles, ideas, and concepts that really shapes our notion of what makes us who we are. All of that sense of what we call the ego, or this thing we call the ego, is a filter through which we experience the present moment, or what Trungpa said earlier, in the nowness. And remember that the idea of cutting through the mind, being decisive, not being like a lion or a tiger, being strong, but not becoming victim to our habitual or learned behaviors. So animals, lions and tigers, have no ability to decide, hey, I'm not going to bite that antelope today because I think it's too young to die. No, they don't think that. They simply act out based on their primordial instinct. Unfortunately, most humans do that too. Many of us are acting out without even knowing what we're doing. So, in other words, we could say we're acting from the unconscious mind rather than the conscious mind. So in mindfulness training, in meditation of mindfulness training, we are trying to move out from the unconscious mind into the fully conscious mind, which is the nowness that Trungpa was talking about. The nowness, or the here now. So for martial arts people, practicing the sword, or practicing karate or jiu-jitsu or whatever, we have a choice. You can either practice it like an animal, a lion or a tiger, or you can practice it like a meditator, which is to use the practice of the martial art as a sword to cut through one's own mind and get into the nowness of the present moment. So in that way, meditation becomes a tool for our everyday life, just as training in a martial art, or being a flower arranger, or learning how to cook, or being a photographer, or just being a great math teacher, or whatever it is. All of those things come from the nowness, without second guessing or without doubt. Being decisive, as Deshimaru says, as decisive as cutting with a sword through the clutter of the mind. So when you're sitting meditation, as thoughts and feelings are arising, we're using the sword of nowness to cut through those things and to see what's really going on. We're not trying to run away from those things. We're not trying to hide from our innermost feelings, those that might be good, those that might be bad, and so on. We're not giving ourselves that dialogue. We're simply witnessing those, allowing them to come and go, but remaining seated, calm, and fully present in the breath. So this is the essence of mindfulness meditation. So we went from 1980 to 1984. The next one, I'm jumping at 10 years to 1995 when I got this book. It was the first book I got by a teacher called Thich Nhat Hahn. Okay, it's called Breathe, You Are Alive. Another really wonderful book. And it's an essential book, I think, for meditators, because what it is Thich Nhat Hanh's commentary or explanation of the Buddha's primary teaching of the mindfulness of breathing. Okay. Now, if you've been practicing sitting meditation at all with anyone who's got a traditional background in teaching mindfulness, you'll know that the breath is the anchor. The breath is the anchor that brings us back to what Trungpa calls the nowness. Okay, the breath is the anchor that opens us up to what Deshimaru calls the sword of cutting through into the present moment. So in this little tiny book, Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Zen teacher from Vietnam, he talks about those teachings of the Buddha specifically on breathing. And I'm going to read for you, I might not read them all, but I'll read some of them. The Buddha's own words on how to practice the mindfulness of breathing, okay? First, breathing in a long breath, he knows I am breathing in a long breath. Breathing out a long breath, he knows I am breathing out a long breath. Number two, breathing in a short breath, he knows I am breathing in a short breath. Breathing out a short breath, he knows I am breathing out a short breath. Three, I am breathing in and I am aware of my whole body. I am breathing out and I'm aware of my whole body. This is how he practices. Four, I am breathing in and making my whole body calm and at peace. I am breathing out and making my whole body calm and at peace. This is how he practices. Five, I am breathing in and feeling joyful. I am breathing out and feeling joyful. This is how he practices. Six, I am breathing in and feeling happy. I am breathing out and feeling happy. He practices like this. Seven, I am breathing in and am aware of the activities of the mind inside me. I am breathing out and am aware of the activities of the mind inside me. He practices like this. Eight, I am breathing in and making the activities of the mind in me calm and at peace. I am breathing out and making the activities of the mind inside me calm and at peace. He practices like this. 9, I am breathing in and am aware of the mind. I am breathing out and am aware of the mind. He practices like this. 10, I am breathing in and making my mind happy and at peace. I am breathing out and making my mind happy and at peace. He practices like this. 11, I am breathing in and concentrating my mind. I am breathing out and concentrating my mind. He practices like this. 12, I am breathing in and liberating my mind. I am breathing out and liberating my mind. He practices like this. 13, I am breathing in and observing the impermanent nature of all teachings. I am breathing out and observing the impermanent nature of all teachings. He practices like this. 14, I am breathing in and observing the fading of all teachings. I am breathing out and observing the fading of all teachings. He practices like this. 15, I am breathing in and observing liberation. I am breathing out and observing liberation. He practices like this. 16, and finally, I am breathing in and observing letting go. I am breathing out and observing letting go. He practices like this. The full awareness of breathing, if developed and practiced continuously according to these 16 instructions, will be rewarding and of great benefit. This is the word of the Buddha Gautama. And he basically starts with just the breath and the body. And he goes through how to use the mind and the focus of the mind eventually until you get to the 16th point, which is letting go. Okay, so the teaching here is basically using the practice of following the breath to find the ability to let go. So what does letting go mean? In the practice of mindfulness meditation, we are returning to the nowness of the present moment. As Trungpa says, as Deshimaru says, we are in meditation cutting through, using the sword of Budo, we're cutting through the objects of the mind to clearly get to the present moment and letting go of those things that we cling onto that we think make us up as the person that you are, whether it's me, Tyrone, or it's Ashley, or it's Benoit, or it's Mayumi, or it's Alan, or it's, whoever it might be. Okay, we identify with that persona, and very often that persona is the one thing that actually steps in the way of us being able to truly experience reality as it is. So we've moved from Trungpa to Deshimaru to Thich Nhat Hahn. Let's move to 1998. I got this book in 1998, and it is probably, I think, the best book to find out how to practice the mechanics or the technique of sitting meditation, the actual technique of sitting. This is the book here by Omori Sogen Roshi, An Introduction to Zen Training. It's a classic, absolute classic on many aspects of sitting meditation, but specifically, I've chosen to read you the piece where he discusses how to sit, the technique of sitting. So he says, the way for human beings is based on the act of correcting the form of one's posture to that which it is meant to be. Why? Because human beings have a concrete lifespan, and the body and mind originally are not two. In this way, raising one's koshi, or the lower back, upright, straightening the body, and still keeping the natural curvature of the spine, one's correct posture fundamentally comes into being. The arms and legs are limbs, and since limbs are branches of the body, the principal form of the body should be thought of like the form of Dharma, or Buddha. Because the weight of the major parts of the body settle into the base of the torso, unlike four-legged animals, the center of gravity of human beings must shift to the koshi, or the small of the back, the curvature in the back. This is probably why the written character for koshi is made up of the character for flesh and the character for vital part. He's talking there about calligraphy, Chinese calligraphy. When we say the koshi stands upright, we are referring to the tension of the muscles in the lower trunk of the body. If tension is put into the muscles of the lower body, naturally the point of strength in the lower abdomen must appear as the center of that tension. This center has been known since ancient times in the East as the Seika-tanden. So I talk about the Seika-tanden being 3 inches below the navel, myself, and also we talk about the hara, okay, which is the overall area of the lower abdomen. He goes on to say, although it is traditionally said that the Seika-tanden is 2.5 or 3 inches below the navel, this kind of external measurement cannot be used to determine its position. If one laughs or after exhaling and emptying the lungs, one's lower abdomen will tighten. Also, try swallowing saliva after emptying the lungs. Then too, the lower abdomen will tighten, and the center of that tension is in the tanden, the Seika-tanden. Although we say that the tanden is the central seat formed when a person maintains correct posture, the tanden is not a definitive object. Even if you dissect a dead body, you will not find it. This is probably the reason why it has not been understood by Western-style scholarship and science, which tends towards objective recognition. To make the tanden the center of power is to concentrate strength in the lower abdomen. However, because the strength of the lower abdomen is an expression of the concentration of the entire body, one cannot simply concentrate strength in the lower abdomen as a part of the body cut off and separated from the whole body. The essence is to maintain the consolidation of the whole body by having the strength to fill the lower abdomen naturally. So what he is talking about here, Sogen Roshi, is what Thich Nhat Hahn calls out in his translation of the Buddha's teaching on breathing, where the Buddha specifically says in number 4, I am breathing in and making my whole body calm and at peace. I am breathing out and making my whole body calm and at peace. So the whole body, as Omori Sogen says, we can't just focus on breathing with the lungs or breathing with the hara. We have to breathe with the whole body. We have to fill the entire body with energy. And as Omori Sogen Roshi says, the essence of energy in the body is the center. So any of you who practice martial arts, or perhaps even musicians, or great skaters, or surfers, or anyone that uses the body knows that the center of the body is the hara, here, the abdomen, and the koshi. So it's really important when sitting on the cushion that this is where your center of gravity is. And that's why it's so important to have the proper form of sitting. Because as Omori Sogen says, if you don't have the body upright with the koshi naturally curved and the energy seated in the seika tanden, feeling the strength of the entire body, breathing with the tanden and breathing with the entire body, you can't wake up the autonomic nervous system. So we can't control the autonomic nervous system. We have no way of influencing it. It is beyond our conscious control. But through sitting meditation and mindfulness training, we trigger this inner nervous system to bring balance between the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. So this is the actual physical or scientific effect of practice, which is well studied now by MIT and Harvard and lots of other universities. Oxford and England have done a lot of studies on it. And what Omori Sogen is saying is that this is the essence of proper breathing, is breathing with the seika tenden, the center of the body. So we can see now that we've moved from the idea of nowness that Trungpa discussed, through to the idea of the spirit of Budo, and the idea of nowness being achieved through the cutting through of that which gets in the way of us seeing the truth of reality, to the teachings of the Buddha himself through Thich Nhat Hanh's book on how to practice the proper way of breathing in meditation practice, through to Omori Sogen Roshi's teaching on the energy center of the body called the seika tanden, or the hara, and how the breathing the Buddha teaches is done using the center of the body, using the strength of the hara, and breathing with the whole body. So I'll move up now to 2013. I bought this book first in 2013. It wasn't my first book by this lady named Pema Chodron, but I've given away all my other Pema Chodron books to people who needed them. So I just had this one on hand. But it is a fantastic book. It's called Living Beautifully. And it's particularly good for where we are today, because we're in this COVID world of craziness that's happening everywhere. And everything from the virus to racial unrest to war to, I don't know, it's just crazy. But it's about living with uncertainty and change. So it is a really great book from that perspective. But I didn't want to highlight a passage about uncertainty and change. I wanted to highlight a passage which is about opening to the heart in mindfulness meditation, opening to the heart. Okay, so remember in the very beginning, I read from Chogyam Trungpa's book, Meditation and Action, about how the two forms of meditation, one from the West, which really focuses on an external deity. And then the second form, which came from Asia, which focused on no deity and no self, and how they may eventually come into being the same thing eventually. Well, I thought this was appropriate because in traditional strict Zen training, for instance, or Chan training, they don't talk a lot about the heart, okay? Or they don't talk a lot about self-compassion or giving oneself the permission to be vulnerable, or giving oneself the permission to feel sad, or to feel worried, and to really truly acknowledge it, and then to give oneself the ability to heal that through practice, through feeling it in a certain way. So she talks about the opening of the heart. So she says, first, come into the present. Flash on what's happening with you right now. Be fully aware of your body, its energetic quality. Be aware of your thoughts and emotions. Next, feel your heart. Literally placing your hand on your chest if you find that helpful. This is a way of accepting yourself just as you are in that moment. A way of saying, this is my experience right now, and it's okay. Then go into the next moment without any agenda. So go into the next moment without any agenda. So what Pema Chodron is talking about here is the arising of thoughts and feelings as we're practicing sitting meditation, or as we're going about our business in daily life. We experience a whole range of thoughts and feelings, some pleasant and some not so pleasant. And it's easy to accept the ones that are pleasant. It's easy to feel good when the sky is blue and the air is warm. But then the cold wind blows, or the skies cloud over, and we get upset about it, or we feel bad about it, or something bad happens, we lose a job, or we become ill, or someone dies, and we're struck by that heavy feeling that hits the body and the heart. So what Pema Chodron is saying, we meet that experience and we allow ourselves to feel that experience, and we tell ourselves that it's okay to have that experience right now. That's what it is. And she says, it might be helpful to put your hand on your heart, even if that's something that would help you. And then you go into the next moment without any agenda. What does she mean by that? We go into the next moment without any expectation, or without any judgment of the previous moment where we felt our heart and we felt that feeling, and we simply return to the breath. So as the Buddha's 16 instructions for proper breathing, we use the breath as an anchor. So what Pema Chodron is saying, we open up to our own vulnerability, we open up to our own sense of whatever it is that we're feeling at that time, and we tell ourselves, that's okay. Then we move into the next moment without any agenda, without expecting anything in particular. Just experiencing whatever comes up, whatever happens, and breathing into it. So we practice this as we sit on the cushion in the formal position with the straight back, the koshi curve, the hara forward, just as was taught by the Gautama Buddha 2,500 years ago, and sadly is disappearing from modern practice of mindfulness. So I think this is a terrible thing. I think that there's a lot of mindfulness practice out there that somehow has turned mindfulness practice into this kind of little vacation that you take for a few minutes every day just to be mindful of your breathing and feel better and then to move on. But this is not the way of practice. The way of practice is to practice regularly in the formal posture, doing it correctly, as Omori Sogen says in his book. I'll repeat what he says. He says that the way for human beings is based on the act of correcting the form of one's posture to that which is meant to be. Why? Because human beings have a concrete lifespan, and the body and the mind originally are not two. So in other words, the body, or what I often refer to as the body mind, is reflected in the posture. What we bring to the posture when we sit on the cushion is the mind. Okay, so that if we sit lazy, comfortable, lying on the couch, or in any old posture, and we expect to face the present moment with courage and with strength, we're kidding ourselves. It begins with the practice of facing the present moment with strength and fearlessness, as Taisen Deshimaru described in the idea of martial arts, which was originally the way of cutting people to kill them and became the way of cutting through the BS in order to get through to the present moment. The strength of the whole body, the strength of the breath, and the courage of a martial artist to face the present moment. But as Pema Chodron says, even though we have that strength and that fearlessness, sometimes we have a feeling of sadness or anxiety or whatever it is that's negative, and we give ourselves permission to experience that without judging it, being kinder to ourselves, allowing it to pass, and returning to the breath in the correct posture. Finally, I had a book many years ago, and it was this book here, which is called Zen Flesh and Zen Bones. Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. Now, I lost that book. I don't know where it went. Very, very many years ago. I had it as a teenager, and I was in a little town called Gloucester about a month ago, and I found this in a used bookstore. I couldn't believe it. This is an original print book, printed in Japan in 1952, I think it was. 1958. Beautifully printed. You can see the gold leaf is in perfect condition, and it's all like rice paper. It's all beautifully printed. And I just couldn't believe that I found this book. I won't tell you what I paid for it, but it's in perfect, immaculate condition, and it is just a cherished book now that I have. But I won't go into the details of how it is 4 books in one, and lots of Zen stories and meditation stories and stuff like that. But it's very interesting. I'm going to read you a short piece. They're all short, mostly short pieces. And the subject is wind moving and mind moving. And it's kind of a little parable, okay? Number 29. Not the wind, not the flag. 2 monks were arguing about a flag. One said, "The flag is moving." The other monk said, "The wind is moving." The teacher said, the teacher was happening to pass by, and he told them, "Not the wind, not the flag, the mind is moving." And then the commentary says, the 6th patriarch, or the teacher, says, the wind is not moving, the flag is not moving, mind is moving. What does he mean? If you understand this intimately, you will see the 2 monks there trying to buy iron and gaining gold. The sixth patriarch, or their teacher, could not bear to see those two dull heads, so he made such a bargain. Wind, flag, mind moves. The same understanding. When the mouth opens, all are wrong. So, what does this mean? I'm about to open my mouth and be wrong, by the way, but that's essentially what he's saying, is that the the breaking down and intellectualizing of what it is to be fully present, as Trungpa calls, to be in the now and the nowness. The breaking down, the discernment through intellect is absolutely wrong. What he was saying was that once you try to describe it, once you try to intellectualize it, it's gone. The nowness that Trungpa was talking about is something that is all pervasive all the time. We can call it like a super consciousness. So mindfulness training, mindfulness meditation is supposed to get us closer to that pure experience of super consciousness that exists in the mind before you were born. This is a famous Zen koan. What was your face before you were born? So it is the primordial existence of energy and space and consciousness. What is this present moment if you didn't exist? So having said all of that and being totally wrong, as Mumon says, wind, flag, mind moves, the same understanding. When the mouth opens, all are wrong. So what it comes down to at the end of the day is sitting practice properly in the posture, the 2,500-year-old posture, cross-legged, 3 points of contact, seat, 2 knees, full, half, quarter lotus. If you have to sit in a chair, make sure the koshi, as Omori Sogen talks about, is curved and supports the hara, or the sacred tendon. Breathe with the entire body, as the Buddha says. Sit in nowness, as Trungpa said. Cut through the mind, as Deshimaru said. And finally, as Pema Chodron says, soften, be kind to yourself. When you feel anxiety or fear in uncertain times, then just open to that feeling. Don't run from it. Put your hand on your heart and say it's okay. But return to the posture and return to the breath. So that's our little journey for today. Plenty to think about, but don't think too much. Practice is the key. So with that, let's wrap up with a short, just a 1 minute practice to round out the day. And actually we do 2 minutes breath. Let's sit straight, find your posture. Back straight, koshi curved, shoulders down, head straight, support the ceiling, but feel the weight of the body in the cushion. Cosmic mudra, thumbs very lightly touching. Follow the sound of the bell until the sound of the bell fully disappears. Thank you for joining me today, wherever you are, Europe, America. Our next practice will be Monday morning at 8 a.m. till 8:30, as usual, New York time. And I wish you well for the rest of your weekend. And remember that the practice is not just on the cushion, but in everyday life. So try to preserve the practice off the cushion. And just as Omori Sogen says, the body and mind are not two, they're one. All right, let's bring our hands together. Eigasho. Thank you.